Well, let's start the special meeting of the panel on security. We're 8 minutes behind schedule, but we've already formed a quorum. Today we have 2 items on the agenda. First, briefing on the policy address. The other one is also on the policy address. The Commissioner for ICAC will brief us on the policy address. So we have 2 sessions today. First, briefing by the Secretary for Security on the policy address is paper 490-01. We have officials to assist us in our discussion. Today in attendance we have the Secretary for Security, Mr. Leung Kwok, Permanent Secretary for Security, Mr. Joshua Law, Under Secretary for Security, Mr. John Lee, Deputy Secretary for Security, Ms. Carol Yip, Deputy Secretary for Security, Ms. Shirley Leung, and Deputy Secretary for Security, Ms. Maggie Wong. We also have the Commissioner for Narcotics, Mrs. Erica Hui, and the Administrative Assistant to the Secretary, Ms. Polly Kwok, and Political Assistant to the Secretary, Mr. Cassius Lau. Sorry we're late by 7 minutes. Secretary, I understand that you do a briefing. You've given us the salient points of your opening remarks, which have been tabled. On the 16th of January, the Chief Executive released his policy address. As regards the policy agenda and policy initiatives, we've already provided members with a briefing paper. I'd like to highlight a number of salient points in our portfolio of duties. First of all, upgrading of the Chung Kwan-o Police Division to a police district. Because of demographic growth and views expressed by a number of organizations, the police has decided to redeploy the police resources in the Kowloon East region and the ancillary facilities required. We also plan to complete the arrangement for upgrading the Chung Kwan-o Division to a police district in 2015 to better meet the policing needs of Chung Kwan-o. As for combating parallel trade activities, the government is highly concerned about the general nuisance caused by parallel trade activities in the North District area. Some other districts have also felt the nuisance recently. The government convened an interdepartmental meeting on the 18th of September last year and announced a range of measures, including enhancing intelligence collection and exchange, combating breach of conditions of stay by mainland visitors, stepping up measures and enforcement actions to ensure smooth passenger flow, and stepping up inspection of buildings. We understand that the mainland authorities have also coordinated efforts of various departments to give dedicated attention to combating smuggling activities by parallel traders. Punishment has also been enhanced to target syndicated activities and organized parallel trade activities. We'll closely monitor the situation and maintain an intelligence-based enforcement action from time to time at different locations and adjust the strategy as appropriate in light of changing circumstances. We'll maintain close intelligence exchange with mainland authorities to combat organized parallel trade activities. And together with Shenzhen, we'll continue to crack down on syndicated activities. The number of visitor arrivals will continue to surge, and our department will improve the handling capacity and efficiency of boundary control points to cope with the continued growth of visitors. For example, early last year, we've expanded our services to eligible mainland visitors for the visitor e-channel service at major control points. more than 380,000 eligible mainland frequent visitors have enrolled for the e-channel service as at December 2012, and the number of users has accounted for more than 20% of all mainland visitors. Will further alleviate the pressure at boundary control points and increase the number of visitor e-channels available for use. We'll continue to complete our improvement works within the current year. And within this session of the Finance Committee, will obtain sufficient resources for implementing a new immigration control system, the ICONS, to support the operation of immigration control points in the years to come. And we can roll out the service by December this year. About 12,000 cross-boundary students have been using our facilitation services and measures to cross the boundary for schooling. We've actually enhanced the capacity of our control points. Starting from the new school year, traffic is basically smooth for these cross-boundary students. We've already prepared ourselves well for such students, and the police will step up enforcement to implement the zero quota policy, and will continue with our construction of boundary fencing. The work is nearing completion, and the second phase of Lok Ma Chau to Ntong River section will be continued to assist to facilitate passengers crossing the boundary, and members of the public can also enter opened, restricted areas at the boundary. Since the 1st of December 2011, 35,000 checking applications have been processed, and will continue to review the policy, including the views of potential employers and employees on the screening mechanism, to see whether there's further room for improvement, and to examine whether or not modus operandi should be improved.
When it comes to anti-drug efforts, we will continue with our past efforts, and now we have already seen a decline in the number of reported drug abusers as well as newly reported abusers. Now we will continue to adopt a five-pronged approach to target this issue, and also because many drug abusers are in height now, we will target them, so we will try our best to encourage them to seek early intervention. We will try to provide assistance to them as early as possible. And the government plans to launch a public consultation exercise within this year on whether, and if so, how a community-based drug testing scheme should be implemented. The government has an open mind on the proposed CDT scheme, and community consensus is a prerequisite for pursuing the scheme. Implementation of recommendations of the Financial Action Task Force. Hong Kong is committed to implementing the International Anti-Money Laundering and Counter-Financing of Terrorism standards promulgated by FATF. We will step up efforts for implementing FATF's recommendations in relation to the detection of physical cross-border transportation of cash. And also, in 2015, that is the year for mutual evaluation, we will map out the way forward and will consult the security panel in due course concerning the work before the mutual evaluation. Chairman, this ends my brief report, and we will be pleased to answer members' questions. Thank you. How many members would like to raise questions? Please raise your hand. I have here Phan Kwok Wai, Wang Kwok-him, Chen Kam Lam, Kwok Pui Phan, Ma Phong Kwok, James To, Wong Yuk Man, Yu Si Wing. Chung Kwok-him and James Tan.
咁咧就我
I'll give 5 minutes to each member. Please be succinct so that government officials can have time to answer. And I hope that you can all ask your questions and get your answers. Chairman, I am particularly concerned about combating parallel trade activities. Now, from 2009 onwards, we have mainland visitors coming to Hong Kong on multiple entry visas. And now we are seeing a very serious situation in Hong Kong. There is a shortage of baby milk formula, and Hong Kong mothers have to queue up to buy baby formulas for their babies. The government does not have enough measures to tackle this problem. And now this problem has spread to other districts in Hong Kong on top of the North District. Other than baby milk formula, other products also face the same problem, and these people are snapping our products, and also they are causing congestions in many areas, and this very basic food for our babies is lacking, and I don't think the government can fold its hand and just sit there and watch. From early 2010 onwards, the government has implemented a number of measures, and it seems that it has done something, but all these efforts have been ineffective. Now, the government has not studied as to how many visitors or mainland visitors Hong Kong can receive, and there is no cap on these mainland visitors. And also, thirdly, the government is reluctant to implement this policy of allowing visitors or mainland visitors to come to Hong Kong only one time a day. Now, there have been a number of demonstrations. We can see these rallies in Shanghai and also in North District. And lately, we've seen the demonstrators in Mong Kok. They are trying to fight for baby milk formula for their babies. This proves that the government has not done enough to tackle this problem. I hope that the Secretary can give me an answer. Now, even current affairs commentators are saying this. He says that the government has its tools. There are 2 pieces of legislation which the government can amend, and by doing so, these parallel traders can be curbed immediately. Now, first of all, Cap 60, Import and Export Ordinance. If this ordinance can be amended, the CE in Council can have the power to stop parallel traders from exporting baby milk formula from Hong Kong. And secondly, Cap 296, that is about the hoarding of commodities. Now, after Gazetto, the authorities will have the power to control the parallel trading of baby milk formula. Now, this piece of legislation was to stop illegally exporting rice from Hong Kong. In the colonial era, it was a piece of legislation to tackle rice shortage crisis. So the government can actually make use of these ordinance so that enough baby milk formula can be retained in Hong Kong for Hong Kong mothers. Does the government not understand the laws enough? And Secretary, you are getting such a high pay each month, and how come you're not doing anything about this? Now, this is about a huge profits in China, and now they are bringing our baby milk formula away from Hong Kong, and Hong Kong babies are now suffering. Well, Mr. Fan has asked so many questions. It's impossible for me to answer all of these questions in 1 minute. Now we are talking about parallel trading. It's not about smuggling. All along, Hong Kong has welcomed visitors to come to Hong Kong for all sorts of activities, including shopping. The problem now is that the Hong Kong laws do not forbid people from bringing the goods they buy away from Hong Kong. This is not smuggling. Well, Secretary, you are wrong. Well, for smuggling, there has always been cross-border law enforcement. The mainland customers have restrictions on this. Now, each person can only bring about 4 to 6 cans of baby milk formula back to China. Now, why are these people not buying huge amounts of baby milk formula to go back to China? That is because they want to evade tax. Mr. Fan, your time is up. Please leave enough time for the government official to answer your questions, and do not interrupt them. Well, Chairman, I would like to ask a question about paragraph 6 of this paper. That is about implementation of recommendation of the FATF. Now, for anti-monitoring money laundering exercise is the responsibility of the Financial Services and the Treasury Bureau, and of course it's also the Security Bureau's job. Now, lately we have seen a big case. Now, this is it's a very big case, and it's of a historical record. Now, I would like to ask the Secretary. Now, you are saying that you will legislate, and this year you will start to work. So, Secretary, can you explain to me, when it comes to anti-money laundering and counter-financing of terrorism, what measures will you have in the future, and how will you implement such measures? Thank you, Chairman. In this regard, the Security Bureau is responsible for the following problems. That is, cross-boundary transportation of cash. So according to the FATF's recommendations, we have to do certain things. So the details, I would like to ask Mr. Hui to explain more to you. Ms. Hui. With regard to anti-money laundering, the FSTB in the middle of 2008 has already started to take over the coordinating work concerning anti-money laundering and counter-financing of terrorism. In particular, when it comes to customer due diligence and record keeping among designated non-financial business professions, the relevant bureau has already started legislative work. And in CAP 615 already took effect from April 2012 onwards. We have stepped up the relevant provisions in order to target designated non-financial business and professions. The government has all along attached a lot of importance to anti-money laundering, and we have done a lot of work in this regard. So with the implementation of this piece of legislation from the 1st of April 2012 onwards, we have covered more areas of work. And for people who are doing money exchange, they have to apply to the Commissioner of Customs and Excise for registration. And also there will be other work that we will be carrying out. One of this is a declaration concerning cross-boundary transportation of cash. Later on, the relevant recommendations will be submitted to the security panel. Now, I would like to ask the Secretary, when it comes to cross-boundary transportation of cash, what's the present situation? How many cases have been cracked, and how much amount was involved? Do you have the relevant statistics? Now, if a traveler brings cash into Hong Kong, at the present moment he does not have to make any declaration, and we do not require him to demonstrate to us how much cash he has on him. But the FATF asked us to do something in this area. And I would like to point out, at the present moment, the world's trend is like this. If there is a huge amount of cash being transported across boundaries, actually we see less and less cases like this, because money can always be transmitted through electronic means. And if you come to Hong Kong, you don't have to bring a lot of cash. There are all sorts of ways for you to bring in your money. For example, cash cards from banks and also credit cards, so that for travelers or visitors to Hong Kong, they can make use of these means when they spend money. And the FATA is particularly concerned about this area, so we still have the responsibility to do something here. Mr. Chen Kam-lam. Thank you, Chairman. Earlier on, the government told us that the Tseung Kwan O Police Division will be upgraded to a police district. We are talking about the Kowloon East region. I hope this arrangement can be implemented as early as possible. And also for combating parallel trade activities, well, great goods have always been going across the border. This has a long history in Hong Kong, and in the past these parallel traders were mainly from Hong Kong, and after the implementation of the individual traveler schemes, now we are seeing more and more parallel traders from the mainland.
If we only view this as a problem resulting from the multiple entry system, it would be a rather shallow view. If we consider Hong Kong's capacity, you see that such activities will further deal a blow to the economic development of Hong Kong. I'd like to know this. Recently, in combating parallel trade activities, how many Hong Kong people were involved? Understand that recently you laid hands on 400-odd people. Any Hong Kong people amongst them? And what about normal entry and exit activities for normal shopping? Have you differentiated between normal shoppers and parallel traders? Now, for people going in and out of Hong Kong in a normal manner, they may also be bringing commodities with them. Such activities are not the same as parallel trade activities. I don't want you to target the normal shoppers. Secretary, well, when I answered Mr. Gary Fan's questions, I did not have enough time. Now, I'd like to supplement when answering Mr. Chan's questions. Now, Mr. Chan asked whether all parallel traders are mainlanders. We all know that parallel traders, some of them are mainland visitors. Quite many of them, but some are Hong Kong people. Let me give you some statistics. From the 28th of December to the 16th of January, we launched 4 operations in Shanghai. In the 4 operations, we intercepted 684 suspected parallel traders. And during the interception, we learned about some number of information. 404 of them were mainlanders, 59%, and 280 Hong Kong people, 41%. So the number of parallel traders between mainlanders and Hong Kong are in the ratio of 6-4. As for mainland parallel traders, I understand that on the mainland they also have interception operations, and again the ratio is 6-4. I agree with Mr. Chan that given the frequent exchanges between the mainland and Hong Kong, many people are actually shopping in Hong Kong and bringing commodities back to the mainland. Some of them are parallel traders, but not all of them. As for the mainland, any entry visitors, the quantity of commodities to be brought into mainland have a limit. Every time each incoming visitor cannot bring more than $5,000 worth of personal commodities, and for other commodities $2,000. So for a visitor into the mainland, whether it's a mainlander or other visitors, the customs and excise authorities of the mainland would enforce their law. In Hong Kong, we don't have any corresponding law for that. I have to ensure that all members have a chance to ask questions. Now, I have 10 of them on the list, and we still have another item on the agenda. I can only compress members' time each to 4 minutes. Dr. Elizabeth Kwok to be followed by Mr. Ma Fung Kwok. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A few questions concerning the upgrading of Chung Kwan O Police Division to a police district. The residents welcome that, but they're concerned from now on to 2015, youth gangs and law and order might pose problems. So they would like the administration to expedite the program and not wait till 2015 so as to protect the safety of residents there. A number of issues have not been mentioned in the paper. Illegal racing and super speeding, which have become more and more serious. Many residents were saying that they are disturbed by noise at night, and such activities have resulted in danger. So any measures for them? Secondly, about online traps for youngsters. Recently, there are some secondary students who were raped as a result of internet networking. So any measures to target that? Thirdly, the summer vacation is drawing near. Very often there are traps for students seeking jobs. So any measures for that? And then also for females, well, not just females, also males. There are indecent assaults as well as under the skirt photography on MTR carriages. It seems that the problem is still there. Any measures to protect the public? And then there's this issue of sex offences, the inspection of conviction record. The usage rate at the moment is rather low. What measures are there to allow more institutions to know of the system and to use the system? Well, I'd like to spend 2 minutes as far as possible to answer those questions. Well, although the upgrading of Chung Kwan O Police Division to a police district will only be completed in 2015, in the interim, the Commissioner of Police will, in accordance with the law and order situation in the district, suitably deploy manpower within the police division, as well as patrolling personnel, including blue berets in the district, to step up patrol, in particular to target sex offences and other offences. Well, illegal racing is rather disturbing. When I lived in the New Territories when I was a child, I was always disturbed by the noise of illegal racing, where the police has deployed staff resources to intercept such activities and combat such activities which will be ongoing. Now, such illegal activities not just cause nuisance, super speeding at night may result in very serious accidents with fatalities and injuries. And also during major festivals, many youngsters have been cheated in relation to online activities, and some very serious offences have occurred. A special investigation squad has been set up by the police to target salient offences. Apart from that, they also enhance publicity and education, which we always attach importance to. And the police has always been appealing to young people to urge them to be more cautious in online networking activities. In particular for rape cases, very often the victim and the offender know each other. So we have to step up publicity in that regard particularly. In fact, tomorrow, the Commission of Police will also come to further discuss law and order situation with us. Mr. Ma Fung-kwok and then Mr. James To. Mr. Chairman, the policy address does not mention marches and demonstrations, but I'm concerned about that. We're very proud that in the past we did have marches and demonstrations for members of the public to express their views. I note a number of phenomena. Different groups of people with different views have been protesting and marching at the same time. Now that's increasing in number. Secondly, some demonstrators give us the impression that they're deliberately causing nuisance and hurdles. So does the Secretary feel that the situation has deteriorated? Any increase in prosecution cases and violent cases? Secretary? Well, Hong Kong is a free society. All members of the public can exercise their rights to express their views, including the right to march and demonstration, but they have to do so under the legal framework. Mr. Ma mentioned that more and more we see different groups of people with different opinion stage protests and demonstrations at the same time. Now, whatever the group is, under the law we have to assist demonstrators and protesters. Well, if two groups of demonstrators with different views are protesting so near to one another, may cause conflicts. Therefore, the police will be particularly careful in maintaining law and order in such cases and plan well. The police liaise with relevant organizations in advance to make sure that they understand their responsibilities in their demonstration activities. And if people of different opinion are too close to one another, it's very easy to have conflict. Well, in the past, only in one or two cases in which there are conflicts, other demonstrators have handled their activities well. And all of them were able to express their views in a peaceful manner. As for marches and demonstration, indeed, as Mr. Ma said, some demonstrators acted in a drastic manner. We have also observed such a trend. That's why we always appeal to the public to observe law, be law-abiding in their demonstration activities. And protesters and demonstrators do enjoy their rights in law. But if any demonstrator acts against the law, for example, leading to traffic congestion, unlawfully assemble, and so forth, the police is determined to handle such activities and, in accordance with the law, take action. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to know whether or not there are demonstrators staging march and demonstration without applying to the police, and how will the police handle them? Secretary, if any demonstrator conducts illegal marches and demonstration, the police will take action. For example, will first of all issue a warning. If after receiving the warning, the demonstrators stop their illegal behavior, it's all right. But if the demonstrators continue to stage large-scale assembly and cause traffic congestion, the police will take appropriate law enforcement action. Mr. James Toh? Very simple, Mr. Chairman. I'm asking about Article 23 of the Basic Law. We're told that the government is duty-bound to legislate on Article 23. Within this year, is the administration prepared to study, explore, or whatnot on the subject? Secretary? Article 23 is the constitutional responsibility of the administration. In the policy address, this is not mentioned because the government has to handle more important issues like livelihood issues, housing, medical issues, elderly, etc. All those tasks are in full steam at the moment. Mr. Chairman, the CE does not mention that in the policy address, but that does not mean that he's not going to do it. So I'd like to know whether any manpower would be spent on that. Not even 1 hour, not even 1 cent, $1 on the subject. And we're talking about this year. Is it zero for this year? Secretary? Well, our present manpower will be deployed to do present work. For the upcoming year, our focus, well, Mr. Chairman, I'm not talking about focus. I'm asking, will any dollar be spent on the legislation on Article 23? Any hour of any staff member to be spent on the subject? Yes or no? Secretary, to legislate on Article 23, well, if you ask me the subject today, we maintain the same attitude. You ask me whether any dollar or any person will be deployed to handle the relevant law. I can tell members that legislation on Article 23, well, the government has been maintaining the same attitude in the past 10 odd years. If we need to consult the public on Article 23, we'll definitely inform members. Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm not asking about consultation.
I'm asking, have you spent $1 or deployed a person to work on this? Now, has anybody studied this? That is an extra hour or extra dollar will always be spent on this purpose. Now, as of today, for the major task of our bureau, actually they have been highlighted in the paper just submitted to the council. We do not have any staff member that is deployed specifically to do this. I'm not saying a special person tasked with this work, but do you have a small sum like $300,000 or $500,000 earmarked for this job, or any person that has done any work in this regard? Well, Chairman, I'm asking this question. Please ask him to reply to me. Will you be outsourcing the work or do it on a small scale? Well, for this piece of legislation, it will definitely not be outsourced. And at the moment, we do not have a special person deployed to do this work. Mr. Wong Yuk-man, Chairman, Well, this is a policy address briefing, and we do not see any new initiatives. You are just working on your ongoing initiatives. Well, for what you highlighted in your paper, I've seen them all. For example, upgrading of the Kwok-him Police Division to a police district. Is that anything new? We've heard about it for a very long time, and actually the people in the area have been fighting for it for many years, and now you're telling me this is a new initiative? This is outrageous. You're wasting my time. Well, I've seen in today's newspaper, LegCo says that the policy address is actually not a policy address. It's just an executive address. And we're talking about security here. And just now you talked about combating parallel trade activities, but you were arguing, Mr. Fan Kwok, you said that it's not smuggling. Now there are already conflicts between mainlanders and Hong Kong people. This is already existing. Now there are demonstrations in Changsha already, and that can become a security problem. Now this is a policy briefing by the security by the Secretary for Security. No, but you are not telling us anything new. So what are you doing here? You're wasting our time. And for all these things, we have seen them before, we have heard them before, we have agreed on them before. Well, including the reduction of the frontier closed area. Of course, we agreed to that because we are talking about 2,500 hectares. It's a big piece of land. Of course, the cross-boundary entry and exit procedures will have to be streamlined, etc. Of course, I agree to that. But for parallel trading, in this piece of paper, you've told us these measures, but these measures have proven to be not effective. And now this problem has caused a lot of conflicts between mainlanders and Hong Kong people, and there may be huge problems. This involves the whole relationship between Hong Kong and the mainland, and there may even be more serious conflicts. Actually, in the past year, there have been peaceful demonstrations, and there have been a lot of applications for the police no objection to demonstration, etc. In the past, all these were conducted in a smooth manner, and the government adopted, or the police adopted, quite a lenient attitude. However, things have changed. There have been a lot of prosecutions, and you arrest people all the time. For example, on the 1st of January, there were demonstrators, and you arrested the leaders as well as legislative councillors involved. I was also arrested. I have been to the court for more than a dozen days. You are trying to crack down on peaceful demonstrations. Is it not a draconian law? Now, before the handover, did we have to make so many applications? I think today's meeting is useless. Now, almost an hour has passed. What constructive ideas have we come up with in your briefing? I think for its content, we've seen all of it before. We only have limited lifespan, so we want to know more about your measures. Now, parallel trading, it has caused a lot of problems, so what measures do you have in place? Well, Chairman, 5 minutes. No, 4 minutes now. Well, just now was 5 minutes. You are unfair to me. Well, just now the members were allowed to ask for 5 minutes. Now, if Hong Kong is to maintain good law and order, there must be good annual plans. Now, has the Bureau put together yearly plans? And have you liaised with our neighboring places, for example, Singapore and Macau? Have you compared your work to theirs? And also, when it comes to the reduction of frontier closed area, 2,800 hectares of FCA will be reduced to about 400 hectares, and the first stage of the FCA reduction was implemented in February 2012. So how about the law and order there? How about the smuggling of people and goods in that area? Thank you for your question. Now, with regard to the law and order in Hong Kong, the Commissioner of Police each year would have an annual plan. And he would review what happened in Hong Kong in the past year, and also he would look at the present situation and identify areas for more attention. I'm sure the Commissioner of Police will very soon announce his new year annual plan. I have already looked at that plan. Well, our custom is that the Commissioner will be making the announcement, so I am not going to do that on his behalf. In a few days' time, he will announce his new yearly plan. And also for policing, we have to communicate closely with our neighboring countries and areas. Now, if we are facing the same problems, we will step up our joint efforts. However, situations in different places are different. So maybe the policing work is focused on certain areas. Ours may be different. But when it comes to policing cooperation, we have always been maintaining a close relationship with our counterparts overseas, because we will have to combat cross-border crimes together. As for the opening up of FCA, whether smuggling has become more serious in these areas, at the moment we do not see such a tendency. For the FCA, although its size will be significantly reduced, yet an appropriate buffer zone will be retained. So smuggling activity will not become more serious. So it means that in the Commissioner's yearly plan, there will be targets for the coming year, right? Yes, we attach a lot of importance to this. So other than the Commissioner's annual plan, the Central Committee for Fighting Crimes will also hold regular meetings, and they will review Hong Kong's law and order situation regularly, and after their meetings they will announce the crime situation in Hong Kong, what the trends are, and whether the situation has improved or worsened, etc. Now, just now, members have asked about online crimes, and in this area we will beef up our efforts. Kwok-him and James Tian. I would like to ask the Secretary about paragraph 12, that is about anti-drug efforts. Now you say that there are many young people who are taking drugs without being noticed. So I would know more about this. And also there was a school drug test. So what's the progress now? As for young people who are taking drugs without being noticed, well, we attach a lot of importance to that. Well, although there has been a drop in the number of reported drug users, however, for juvenile drug abusers, we discovered that the drug history has actually been lengthened from 1.9 years to 3 years. Now, in the past, they used to gather together and take drug in public areas. Now they are hiding. So in order to crack down on this, we need joint efforts. We cooperate with stakeholders, including NGOs, And on the internet, they will try to identify this kind of problematic young persons. And also, there will be publicities in schools and for parents, so that they can pay more attention to the young people around them and see if they have this kind of problem. We have a reporting hotline, and it's operating 24/7. And also, we have designated persons to answer such phone calls. The hours have been lengthened. In the past, it was just working during office hours, but now it's 24 hours, because we understand that when young people want to call for help, most of the time it's in the middle of the night. So if the calls are not answered in time, then it's very likely that we will miss such cases. As for school drug tests, we have adopted a healthy campus policy. First of all, Tai Po district was chosen as the pilot district, and now it has been extended. For school drug tests, now is incorporated with a larger project, that is healthy campus scheme. And also the scheme has been extended to schools that are interested all over the territory. We will liaise with school organizations. We hope that through these networks we can encourage schools to take part in the healthy campus scheme. And the number of participating schools has been increasing. Now we have about 50 schools that have participated in this scheme, and we have asked organizations to carry out a study. That is, ever since the implementation of this scheme, school children and parents now have a better understanding of dangerous drugs.
Although we've not seen an increase in the number of participating schools, the potential influence is emerging. Anti-narcotics cannot be done overnight. It's something for the long term. Mr. Michael Tian, to be followed by Mr. Frankie Yik. Thank you, Chairman. This issue of parallel trading has caused me to think about an in-depth issue of one country, two systems. 7 million people are relying on our motherland with a population of 1.3 billion people. Any shortcomings in law enforcement may cause serious problems, but we've always adhered to the one country, two systems concept. Purchases, buyer stamp duty, mainland pregnant women coming to Hong Kong to give birth to babies, etc., etc. We asked you to sign an agreement with the mainland to restrict the number of pregnant women coming to Hong Kong to deliver babies. Mr. C.Y. Leung went to the mainland recently. Why can't we step up liaison with the mainland? Well, one country, two systems. If the C&E department falls short of enforcing the law effectively, why can't we reflect the situation to the CPG? For mainland visitors, they're $5,000 per visitor. Now on the mainland, one household only has one child. How much baby formula they need? The C&E department, from its record, knows how many times a person is visiting Hong Kong. So for this baby formula problem, can we not communicate with them? Now, 400 odd of the 600 odd people are Hong Kong people. Many of them are men. Why are men buying so much baby formula? I don't think each male, will need to consume 10 cans of or tins of baby formula every day. Now, Chairman, for the NPC this year, I would like to jointly sign a motion with other deputies to ask why there can't be better exchange of information and better law enforcement. The NPC will have to do its own job. I just want to know whether the SARG has talked to the CPG. Is it that they said that they could do nothing? If so, why? Secretary. Mr. Chairman, at various levels, we communicate with different ministries and bureaus. To cite an example, not long ago, I visited Beijing for a courteous visit. And together, I met with the leaders of the Customs Bureau. And when the CS1 administration visited Beijing on a protocol visit, she also had similar exchanges with the mainland authorities. As for parallel trading activities, our main target provinces and municipalities are Guangdong Province and Shanzhen. And they've actually set up a dedicated task force to exchange information and views with us and carry out corresponding action. Apart from Guangdong Province, we also have a second layer of synergy and communication, and that's in Shenzhen. I'd like to know whether the C&E department has any information from the immigration department. Without that information, they can't combat smuggling activities, etc. Time's up, Mr. Frankie Yik. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In paragraph 8 of his speaking notes, the Secretary said that there are about 12,000 cross-boundary students. And we recently heard that school places in North District, Changsha, etc. had been tight in supply. I understand that Shenzhen did not do streaming well enough. Some cross-boundary students cross the boundary mainly at a particular boundary control point. So I'd like to know more about streaming. And then I'd like to follow up on Mr. Chung Kwok-pan's question about youth drug addicts. I did have some experience with night youths, so to speak. The school drug test is, of course, very controversial. I would like to know how parents can detect drug taking on the part of their children, and if they are able to detect such activities, it's still very difficult to fetch these parents because they are working very, very hard and very busily. So I just want to know how the administration can come into contact with these parents to assist them in identifying whether or not their students are drug addicts. Secretary, I'll try my best to answer all the questions within the limited time. For the cross-boundary students, this year we have 12,000. Next year it may grow to 17,000. How do these students come to Hong Kong? We understand that, first of all, they cross at Lo Wu, which is already saturated at the moment. The village road at Lo Wu is too narrow. For nanny buses, they have to be capped in number. Otherwise, there will be danger. We are firstly concerned about the physical safety of these students. In the near future, for the Lo Wu control point, will freeze the number of cross-boundary students. In the long run, we would like to reduce that number and do streaming. Secondly, Lok Ma Chau spur line is another frequented cross-boundary point because the space there is larger. Mainland security officials have already at Fu-Tian designated a particular area for the parking of minibuses. And at that boundary control point, the students don't need to cross any road on the mainland side. So for Lok Ma Chau Spur Line, we've increased the number of parking spaces for nanny buses such that we can meet today's need at peak hours. In the coming year, we'll have similar plans to address such requests. Another major cross-boundary control point is at Shenzhen Bay, which is bigger in area and capacity is also bigger. If a cross-boundary student does not live near Shenzhen Bay like Nanshan, if you ask the student to come to Shenzhen Bay to cross the boundary, is unrealistic. Another issue is at Man Kam Tow Control Point. Man Kam Tow Control Point is being renovated at the moment. We hope that renovation works can be completed within the coming year. Then the number of cross-boundary students there can be increased, and the Bureau will do coordination. We will still have another item on the agenda. On the list, I still have 5 members who would like to speak. I've calculated the time. First of all, I'd like to extend this meeting by half an hour. Any objection? An extension of half an hour. Any objection? To extend today's meeting by half an hour to 10:30. Any objection? No? No? Then I'll draw a line there. That is up to Ms. Sit Ho. I'll draw a line there. I won't accommodate any more members, so still 4 minutes each. Mr. Paul Tse and then Mr. Lam Tai Fai. Mr. Chairman, multiple entry is actually a good policy for mainland visitors in Hong Kong. In fact, for Hong Kong residents, we always have this multiple entry arrangement. But if the situation runs out of control, then a beneficial policy may become detrimental. Now, first of all, Secretary, you just provided us with some figures. Cross-boundary smuggling activities in the ratio of 6 to 4 in terms of people. 6 for Hong Kong people and 4 for mainlanders. As for the value of goods, many commodities crossing the boundary are bulky and hard. From TV monitors, we see that there are many of them. However, smugglers are mainly smuggling high-value commodities like TV sets and so forth. So I just want to know whether there's any difference in number between mainlanders and Hong Kong residents. Secondly, baby formula, yogurt, etc. had been taken across the boundary. Do you know the actual quantities? Hong Kong people seem to be offended by such parallel trading activities. But in fact, they're only normal shoppers. They're not offenders. Thirdly, there's serious conflict between Hong Kong people and mainlanders. Well, I respect freedom of speech, marches, demonstrations, etc. But yesterday I saw that some mainlanders were intercepted on the street and insulted, and even commodities held by them had to be measured. To a certain extent, that may be tantamount to unlawful custody, and even some elderly ladies were subject to such behavior, which is not civilized. Will the government do something to minimize the conflicts between the two sides? Secretary, concerning the ratio of parallel traders, the figures I quoted were based on the latest information, but I have to add that the ratio is not stable. Sometimes we may have more Hong Kong people, sometimes we may have more mainlanders. What about the value of goods? Well, value of goods, the same occurs. We have to look at the actual situation. It really depends on what mainlanders need. If a new electronic product is on the market of Hong Kong, but it's not yet found in the mainland market, then maybe we see more of these products crossing the boundary. But when a product becomes very popular on the mainland, then the number may drop. Do you have actual figures? The mainland has implemented anti-smuggling and parallel trading activities. Maybe I can give you some figures. Sorry, I have to look up my record. Maybe you give me the figures later. Oh, yes, I give them to you later. Well, the mainland authorities intercepted a huge number of cases. For the customs authorities on the mainland, we exchanged intelligence with them, and just recently they detected a very big syndicate. And in Hong Kong, we do collect similar intelligence. I already said that our operations are launched at different times and at different locations. Mr. Lam Tai Fai? Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Secretary, members. Secretary, I of course understand that parallel trading is not equivalent to smuggling, and parallel traders may not be involved in smuggling activities. However, frequent parallel trading activities have, in fact, affected the day-to-day living of North District residents, and law and order, pedestrian flow, traffic and transport, physical safety, household safety, etc., have been affected. You repeatedly said that you attach importance to the issue, and you repeatedly said that you would enhance intelligence collection. But we only discovered that your measures were not effective, and parallel trading activities have proliferated even more, impacting more on law and order. The residents' daily living has been affected, and your ineffective and incompetent measures have actually resulted in conflicts. You want Hong Kong people to love Hong Kong, love their country. At the same time, you create resentments, confrontation, conflicts. And for these people who would like to grab baby formally, they may be competing for transport facilities with Hong Kong people. Up to this moment, I can't see any effective measure to address the problem. As Mr. Wong Yok-man said, this is actually a time bomb that may explode any time. Quarrels may evolve eventually into something even more serious. The government must have some sense of crisis. We may reach an ignition point. It's not just a problem of parallel trading. It's a problem of sentiments. If you don't handle the sentiments, well, today, all of us are warning you. All of us are making suggestions to you. If the time bomb explodes, something fatal may happen, and that's quite meaningless.
Now, in the policy address, it is proposed that numerous committees be set up. Now, why don't you set up a committee to look into this issue, that is to tackle parallel trading? Now, of course, Mr. Fan Kwok-wai should not be appointed as the chairman, because that will create more conflicts, and a lot of people would like to be chairman anyway. I think the police in North District should be very clear about this. This is actually not very difficult. Well, as long as Hong Kong and their mainland counterparts cooperate, and if a visitor is carrying too much goods, he should be sent back. And also, maybe such visitors or such parallel traders should only be allowed onto a certain car of the train. You should have collected enough intelligence. You should talk to these parallel traders. Now, even in Mongkok, we have a pedestrianized zone. How about allocating a period in a day so that these parallel traders can do their trading? Or maybe 1 or 2 more gates can be opened for these parallel traders specifically. So if you do not tackle this problem, there will be more arguments. Secretary, with regard to the upgrading of the Tseung Kwan O Police Division to a police district, that we welcome this measure. However, we still have to wait for 2 years. I would like to ask this again. In the coming 2 years, how will the administration deploy more manpower so that we don't have to wait till 2015 before we have sufficient policing in the Tseung Kwan O district? I hope the Secretary can answer this question. And also, I still have 2 other questions. The first one is about parallel trade. For Hong Kong people, this has a direct and huge impact, and it has also intensified the conflicts between the 2 sides. The Bureau told us that it will be targeting people who are breaching the conditions of stay. However, some members asked whether more work can be done against the people behind the scene. Actually, they are the source of the problem. So you have to really crack down the problem at source. Now, what has the administration been doing with regard to intelligence collection? And also, another question is about sexual conviction record check scheme. Now, schools and organizations can check this record, and some parents hope that they can also be included in the scheme so that they can check whether their home tutors have had sexual conviction before. Now, for families in which both parents are working, then most of the time the home tutor would be facing the child alone. So some parents are very, very worried. So will you consider improving the scheme? Now, first of all, about parallel trading. When it comes to intelligence, actually, we also target the people behind the scene. We have forwarded our intelligence to the Guangdong authorities, and from January to November last year, they have cracked over 10,000 smuggling cases, and the value involved exceeded 20 billion RMB, and they have arrested over 1,000 people. So both sides are very concerned about the people behind smuggling activities, and we will take action accordingly. And when we have more information and when it's suitable, we will of course report to member again. And of course, we understand that a lot of problems have been brought to the residents of the North District. Police have been doing a lot of work in this area. Just now, members also mentioned this problem. We are very concerned as well. We are liaising with the stakeholders, in particular the railways, so that they can do more in this regard. As for Tseung Kwan O, at the last meeting we already discussed this. We will adopt a gradual approach when it comes to increasing manpower. We will not wait until 2012 before manpower is increased. As for sexual conviction record check scheme, now we have a pilot scheme, and we are reviewing it at the moment. We hope that when situation allows, the scheme can be expanded gradually. Mr. Ho, and then Sit Ho. Well, Chairman, just now members asked a lot of questions concerning the individual traveller scheme and multi-entry visas of mainlanders, because they have caused a lot of problems, and there may also be risks of even more conflicts. And demonstrators, some of them are now intercepting mainland visitors. Yes, of course, we understand that they are very angry, but this actually has brought shame to Hong Kong. This is actually very serious. If you read the news, you will know how serious the problem is. However, the policy address is silent on this. All the most sensitive issues, all the issues that are most concerned by Hong Kong people are not included in the policy address. It is totally bland. So what's the point of reporting to us today? How are you going to address all these problems? You haven't given us concrete answers. We know that these problems have existed for a very long time. Several years ago, the problem of mainland mothers coming to deliver their babies in Hong Kong has already been a problem. There have been a lot of grievances, and now there are many cross-border students, and they are fighting for school places with Hong Kong children, and also Hong Kong rental has risen significantly, and when you look at the street, it seems that all the shop spaces are occupied by jewelry shops, and property price has skyrocketed. People have been purchasing properties for hoarding purposes, and young people will never be able to buy properties. And there are two very important issues, that is population policies and cross-boundary policies, but the policy address is silent on both issues. And what has Leung Chun-ying done about these? And when it comes to boundary control, multi-entry visa and individual traveller scheme, they have brought a lot of problems, and the CE has not done anything. He just adopts a piecemeal approach, and that would not solve the problem at all. You have to tackle the problem as source. If you can't do anything, I'm not asking you to resign, but I'm asking you to establish a high-level committee so that you can solicit more help. Now, this is a problem you have to tackle at source. That is the entry point. Now, C.Y. Leung does not do anything. He just waits and listens to the liaison office. As for population policy, members may know that the relevant policy committee is headed by the CS, and it has already commenced work. That committee will look into the issues highlighted by Mr. Ho just now. I hope we can be given some time, because this is a very complicated issue. It's not like we have a meeting today and tomorrow all the problems can be resolved. But the policy address is silent on this. Not a word is mentioned about this. I would like to also follow up on population policy. Now, in the policy address, security is not mentioned. It's not one of the important measures. It's actually not touched. As for population policy, when C.Y. Leung was running in the election, he mentioned population policy. He pointed out that in the past 10 years, population in Hong Kong has increased, and he said that a policy study would have to be conducted in this regard. However, when it comes to single entry permit, we do not have the vetting authority. When it comes to family reunion, we cannot do anything. The approval authority lies with the mainland government, and actually there are corruptions involved. I think Hong Kong should get back the authority because Hong Kong is a small city. How many more people can be accommodated? And we have opened up many more control points. There are now many people coming in and out of Hong Kong every day. Do we have enough capacity to accommodate all this? And if we want to attract tourists, what kind of tourists do we want to attract? Why can't we have the approval authority? Just now many members also asked about this. For mainland visitors, of course, they have brought about financial benefits to us. However, they are also damaging our local culture. Now, when will the government take action so that we can get back our approval authority? For mainland visitors, when they come to Hong Kong, according to the basic law, they have to obtain visas. As for single entry permits, nowadays the quota is 150. So for single entry permits, I don't want to know about that. I'm talking about two-way permit. Well, that means for those people coming to Hong Kong for visiting relatives or doing business. I would like to answer this question in two parts. First of all, for mainland people, they can come to Hong Kong on tours, and they can also come by the individual traveler scheme. And this has not been expanded in the past years because we have considered the capacity of receiving visitors. We have looked at our facilities, our control points handling capacity, etc. And now a study is being carried out. This study has not been completed yet.
Anyway, Hong Kong's capacity is limited. While attracting more visitors to Hong Kong, we'll look at our capacity at the boundary control points and at other facilities. All along, Hong Kong has been a tourism city. We've been attracting visitors from all over the world to Hong Kong. Well, Mr. Chairman, for the last 20 seconds, I have to speak. Of course, we welcome all visitors from all over the world. But on the mainland, we have a population of over 1 billion people. And now with this multiple entry system, we cannot estimate how many mainlanders will come to Hong Kong. We have to calculate the overall capacity of Hong Kong, not just the capacity of boundary control points. Well, I think members have already touched upon security issues, and in terms of law and order and immigration issues, as well as security issues, I believe members have all expressed their views, and they'll continue to do so on Wednesday. So much for this item. That is briefing by the Secretary for Security on the policy address. Let's move on to item 2 of the agenda, briefing by the Commissioner, ICAC, on the policy address. This meeting will last till 10:30. Today, from the ICAC, we have, while they are entering the room, I'd like to read out their names. I believe time will be even tighter for this item. I see that a number of members will ask questions. I'll calculate the time. I must make sure that we finish our meeting at 10:30. In attendance today for this discussion item, we have the Commissioner, ICAC, Mr. Simon Pei, the Head of Operations, Mr. Ryan Wong, the Director of Community Relations, Ms. Julie Mu, and the Director of Corruption Prevention, Mr. Jie Mansheng. Welcome, all of you. We've all got your paper. Perhaps I should first give the floor to the Commissioner for a briefing. We're sorry we're late, so time is quite tight. We must finish this meeting at 10:30. Commissioner, well, thank you, Chairman. We've submitted a paper to members in relation to overall corruption scenes as well as next year's major anti-corruption initiatives. First of all, for corruption complaints, in 2012, the Commission received 3,932 corruption complaints. When compared to 2011, with 4,010 cases, there was a decrease of 2%. And the number of pursuable complaints went down from 4%, from 3,074 to 2,950. Of all the complaints received, there was a drop of 7% involving public bodies. And 62% were targeted at the private sector, 31% related to government departments. So overall speaking, the distribution of cases was similar to that of last year or the year before. During the year, 196 persons in 107 cases were prosecuted for various non-election offences. When compared with figures in 2011, there was respectively a decrease of 29% and 24% in terms of cases. And there were a number of causes. First of all, the pursuable complaints have dropped, in particular for cases with more than one defendant. In 2011, for a number of persons and cases, the person-based and case-based conviction rates for non-election offences were 76% and 84% respectively. There were 2,413 election-related complaints, of which 2,205 are related to the 2011 District Council election. In May 2012, the miscellaneous provisions on elections were passed, and from the registration and electoral office, we received about 600 election-related complaints. As for public bodies, for government departments, there was a rise of 7%. Were mainly related to abuse of power and soliciting or receiving loans without consent, as well as dereliction of duty. The number of complaints has increased, but according to ICAC's investigation, internal corruption activities in the government had been effectively curbed, and there's no trace of revival of syndicated corruption. We recorded 292 cases, a rise of 12%. As for public officers with misconduct, we had seen a rise in trend. Our investigation reveals that corruption activities have gradually changed from bribery and receipt of interest to conflict of interest. The ICAC will enhance the integrity scheme for civil servants. In 2013, the Commission will enhance its collaboration with government departments and public bodies. For the private sector, the year before last, we recorded 2,664 cases, which dropped to 2,483 cases last year. And for pursuable complaints, they decreased both by 7% from 2,148 to 1,997. Investment-related complaints still exceed 40%. We believe that this is related to Operation Building Bright. 861 pursuable cases were recorded out of 1,017 building management complaints. The ICAC will continue to monitor closely whether or not syndicated corruption organizations are trying to reap benefits from Operation Building Bright. In the catering business, entertainment business, there was a drop from 164 to 170 odd. Trade dropped to 106. Fuel, food, and other household supply, a drop from 77 to 57 in cases. Rises, construction industry, 117 rising to 197. Financial services, rising to 168 cases. Medical, rising from 112 to 142 cases. And for ICAC management, we attach importance to enhancing our professionalism. In recent years, the nature of complaints received is rather complicated, particularly those related to financial services and insurance industries. Fake instruments and high-tech had been used in offences. We'll actively recruit high-quality young persons to fill vacancies. In 2013, we'll enhance our human resources management system to promote the latest generation of information management so as to facilitate our investigation work. As for community relations, we attach importance to education for youths. We plan to organize a pilot ICAC ambassador program in secondary schools in support of the other learning experience requirement of the new senior secondary curriculum. There will also be ethical leadership training and a youth forum. The ICAC will be celebrating its 40th anniversary in 2014. A 2-year publicity program will be kicked off in 2013 with a series of lead-in activities, including the production of a television drama series and joint projects with the district committees. A 30-minute G-door-door movie will be produced to promote positive attitudes and values among young kids and support parenting education. And we'll also have an ICAC smartphone app. All in all, we'll tackle corruption without fear or favor and sustain a culture of probity within the community. Mr. Wong Kwok-him, Kwok Wai-keung, Leung Sing, Sit Ho, Michael Tian, Frankie Yik, and Mr. Albert Ho would like to ask questions. Any more? Mr. Paul Tse, and also Mr. Chan Kam Lam. Any more? If not, I'll draw a line there. I won't entertain any more. All right? 3 minutes each, covering both questions and answers. I have to stop you once the 3-minute period is up, even though the official may not have finished his answer. Mr. Wong Kwok-him, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, I'd like to ask the Commissioner something about building management complaints and corruption cases. Undoubtedly, such corruption complaints are highest in number, 40%. Now, such incidents are closely related to people's livelihood. In the coming year, how will you launch your anti-corruption initiatives to guard against bribery related to building management and building renovation or repair? Commissioner, in terms of building repair, indeed, takes up quite a big portion of the total number of cases. And due to the Operation Building Bright program, as well as the mandatory building inspection and window inspection schemes, we envisage more such cases and will do more. may I defer to the Direction of Corruption Prevention for more details. Mr. Jie, in the coming year, in terms of building repair, that will be our main focus. There will be 3 parts. We have a practice guide for building repair and maintenance. We'll upgrade this building maintenance toolkit. Secondly, we'll do training related to corruption prevention together with the Development Bureau, Housing Society, Urban Renewal Authority, Home Affairs Department, and building management companies. Will step up our services. We've just produced a DVD video to enhance knowledge and corruption tactics. Thirdly, technical and other support should be enhanced for landlords. Together with other government departments like Development Bureau, Housing Society, and Home Affairs Department, we'll do this. So, we'll launch comprehensive measures in guarding against corruption in building maintenance. Mr. Wong, for the construction industry, they also recorded the highest number of corruption cases. How will you look at this? I'd like to defer to Mr. Zhe. For the construction industry, the number of corruption complaints has always been at the topmost part of the list. Mr. Kwok-him. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for the Commissioner in relation to Owners Corporation. Well, Operation Building Bright has come to the end of a particular stage. For past Operation Building Bright cases were seminars and talks launched by the ICAC mandatory or voluntary. Can you make them mandatory in future so that OCs can grasp more information? My second question is related to the civil service. I believe most of our civil servants are clean and honest. However, the information paper indicates that some civil servants may have abused their power or breached the law in other aspects, not corruption. Is it necessary to enhance the guidelines for civil servants? Commissioner, first of all, whether seminars and talks are mandatory, I have to say that OCs are left to voluntarily participate in such seminars and talks. We provide them with training information. That's good for them. For civil servants, every year we've been doing a great deal of education. Forums were launched, training courses were organized. In every department, there is an ethical officer, and internal meetings have to be conducted to urge civil servants to be careful about their conduct and to continuously monitor their behavior. As for MIPO, what is that in Chinese? Yes, for misconduct of public officers, we continuously discuss with the Civil Service Bureau what can be done. As I mentioned, there's a trend of deterioration in this regard. And in the latter half of last year, free guidelines have been published for civil servants. We'll enhance our collaboration with the Civil Service Bureau.
Have you looked at these cases and then made relevant recommendations? Maybe I can ask Mr. Ryan Wong to answer this question. Well, Chairman, we cooperated with the CSB. It's not just about explaining the legal aspects concerning corruption, but we would also use cases as educational materials. Mr. Leung. Well, for the number of corruption complaints, the number has dropped. I'm pleased with that. However, lately I've seen mass media reporting on some prima facie cases, and there have been reports made to the ICAC. Now, for this kind of reports in the press, will ICAC follow up on them? If you do, then do you have enough manpower? And if there's not enough evidence, will you really use polygraph? Yes, lately there has been a new trend, because in the past, when people lodge complaints with the ICAC, they tended to keep a low profile. They didn't want other people to know. So for news we read in the newspapers, they can only be used as a reference. We, of course, have to look at the evidences adduced by complainants. As for manpower, just now, yes, I told you that the number of corruption complaints has dropped a bit. However, the cases are getting more complicated. This actually exerts a huge pressure on our manpower. Mr. To and then Mr. Michael Tan. Now, to be frank, in the past year, because the ex-CE, Donald Chung, was discovered that he may have received benefits from others, so there were complaints lodged in ICAC, and also during the last election there were complaints, and as far as I understand, today people will be going to ICAC to lodge complaints against the existing CE. So how many corruption complaints about CEs have been lodged? In the past, when a case ended, the ICAC may not announce to the public. The relevant persons were informed only. But actually, I think Hong Kong people has the right to know. And also for ICAC, of course, in the law, is only responsible to the CE. However, if the investigation of the CE is involved, then is there a check and balance mechanism? Now, if you are too strict, then of course people would query whether you have been turned into a political tool. And if you are too lenient, people may accuse you of protecting fellow government officials. So can you tell the public here? Now, when it comes to investigating the CE, what's the mechanism? And after the investigation, because the content of the investigation is about public interest, so will you tell the public the result of your investigation? No matter whether it's a complaint concerning the ex-CE or the existing CE, because this involves individual cases, so I'm not going to comment on them. That also includes the number of complaints. And secondly, about investigations, just now, Ms. Sitho has mentioned the procedures. And after the investigation, there are several possibilities. And if there is enough confidence, then in accordance with the recommendations of the Department of Justice, we will initiate a prosecution. And if there are not enough evidences, then we will hand the case over to a committee, which is a committee to review corruption complaints. This committee is responsible for monitoring the work of our operations division. So all the cases will be referred to this committee. Afterwards, the recommendations will be checked by the committee, and if the committee finds this result satisfactory, then the cases can be wrapped up. Mr. Michael Tan? I am more concerned about paragraph 20 to 22. You are saying that the cases are getting more complicated, so you want to recruit young people of higher caliber. But of course, everybody wants to hire young people of high caliber. So why would they want to work for ICAC? And lately, I've seen reports saying that the wastage rate of your department has been increasing. It seems that because they have too much work at your office, and other public organizations, for example, SFC is paying much higher. And also another of your senior officer was recruited by another organization. Actually, this person retired from the ICAC, and lately he's been asked to come back to ICAC to head the office. I think that's quite strange. Actually, working in your office is very difficult. I don't know how much money or time you have to spend on training young people. And now these people, after training, they would go to work for other public bodies. And even you have to hire a retired person to work for you. Yes, I think you might have the brightest A-list in your office. So how are you going to retain these people? Yes, it's not difficult to recruit them, but how are you going to keep them? With regard to Mr. Tian's question, the ICAC has a very good recruiting and training program for young people. Now, of course, the capability is very important, but the integrity is also very important. Yes, we understand that a few years ago the wastage rate was high. Our talents at that time were very popular in the financial sector, so that's why they are paying a much higher pay to get them. As a result, we have to implement new measures, and we are now recruiting more people and giving them better training. Of course, we have to spend a lot of money and effort in training these people because we are different from other disciplinary forces. In paragraph 4 of your paper, you say that, well, we have noticed that some members of the disciplinary force have not taken action against certain matters. We talked about grey goods trading, etc. So if you do not enforce the law stringently, these may become social problems. Here you haven't given us many details. So what improvement measures will you take to tackle this problem? I would like to ask Mr. Wong to answer this question. Chairman, as for law enforcement agents, if they abuse their powers, or if they are derelict of duties, or if they do not do what they need to do, to the ICAC this is very serious. And this actually is an offense under the Prevention of Bribery Ordinance. Now, the ICAC, when it was established, it made a lot of effort in cracking down on police corruption. Of course, this is no longer serious now. And ICAC still monitors the situation very closely. In the past, ICAC was fighting against these other law enforcement agencies, but now we are cooperating with them. And our senior officers meet all the time, and if they identify areas of concern, the police will take their actions, and the ICAC will also take its actions. We will enforce the law. Our other departments will also do education. Yes, I understand that the ICAC has been doing a very good job. However, in this report, it is said that, well, there are officers that may not have taken law enforcement action when they were required to do so. Now, for example, for the police, we may have received complaints like this. That is, for some police officers, they have received complaints, and in the course of discharging the duties, they might have favored a certain side. So the complainants suspected that the police officer might have been bribed. So that's why he lodged a complaint with the ICAC. So are you talking about the police only? No. I'm also talking about other law enforcement agencies. So can you give us the relevant information later? I want to know why they are not enforcing the law. Yes, I will give you the information after the meeting. Mr. Ho, and then Mr. Paul Chair. Oh, Mr. Albert Ho. Oh, I've heard cases like this, that when the ICAC arrested people, there have been reporters reporting on them, right? But for some other cases, when the ICAC carries out the investigation, we also know about them. Actually, some of these cases involve huge public interest. For example, if they involve public officers or even a CE. And if the investigation ends and you do not explain to the public, that would be quite strange. Of course, if you press a charge afterwards, of course, the community will know. Yet, if you think the case is not substantiated, why can't you also tell the public? This is question number one. And then I have another question. Well, how many commercial crime cases involve the mainland? Because we understand that half of the listed companies in Hong Kong are from the mainland. So during your investigation, maybe some of their officers will just go back to the mainland.
Number three, I'm very concerned about syndicated corruption, which involves building management and repair. You know that you cannot handle such corruption cases one by one. So any investigation strategy to crack down on these syndicates? Commissioner, in terms of investigation, as I mentioned just now, all investigation cases would be referred to a vetting committee. Our reports to that committee are very detailed, covering information collected, the DOJ's advice, and so forth. Of course, upon the conclusion of a case, if there's insufficient evidence, we'll also inform the parties concerned. And for almost 39 years, we've not been announcing in public the investigation result. Will you contemplate changing that policy? Well, all along, corruption complaints are confidential. This also applies to the result of our investigation. Mr. Paul Deng, then Mr. Chen Kam-lan. Mr. Chairman, before the handover, we have very clear memory, for example, about Mr. Godba, a senior inspector. After the handover, for corruption prosecution involving public officers, they are as senior as CES for administration and even a former CE, who are still subject to certain accusations. 32 capital A stipulates that you, the Commissioner, ICAC, does have the power to refer a case to the Secretary for Justice, who will then consider whether or not a case should be referred to the LegCo for the triggering of impeachment procedures. Fortunately, in the past, we did not have any precedent. However, now, do you have any guidelines for such a procedure? Within your department, how will you consider when you're going to invoke 32A to refer a case to the S4J for further referral to the LegCo for starting the impeachment process? Commissioner, just now I did not have the opportunity to answer a similar question from Mr. To. Mr. Porter was very correct. That's what the law says. Any corruption complaint involving the chief executive, well, just now Ms. Sido asked me whether I would be more stringent or more lenient. I said I would adopt an equal treatment policy. We won't be more lenient towards the CE. For this sort of complaints, we'll report to the Secretary for Justice, but not the CE. That means if any complaint involves the CE, I'll not report to the CE, rather I'll report to the S4J. The S4J will consider our investigation details, evidence, and our report. If he is of the view that it is fit and proper to refer the case to the LegCo, then we'll do so for further handling. Well, maybe the S4J is a more appropriate person to answer this question. For the Commissioner, between prosecution and referral to the S4J and referral to the LegCo, any factor of consideration, or they're not mutually inclusive? I don't quite understand your question. Prosecution, between prosecution and referral to LegCo, any mutual exclusivity, or you can consider both at the same time? Mr. Chairman. Well, Mr. Chan Kam-lam, Mr. Chairman, the ICAC is about to celebrate its 40th anniversary. Hong Kong is so successful because we are a clean society. And the contribution of ICAC must not be neglected. Now, if we look at the information here, you see that be it in the commercial sector or the political sector, there's still corruption. That's not very ideal. I'd like to ask the Commissioner a question. Apart from the education, publicity, and promotion done, as we still have a problem, what are the main reasons? Is it because we have not done enough in terms of anti-corruption? Or is it because punishment handed down as a result of prosecution were not deterrent enough? Commissioner, thank you, Chairman. Yes, we're almost into our 40th year. Past effort in education and publicity have been effective in the long run. In the past 30 to 40 years, we've laid a very sound foundation for society. As for the number of complaints received, 3,000 to 4,000 per year, not too many. In terms of international ranking, in 2012, we're given the ranking of 14th in the world. It's a high ranking. We also scored very high marks. I can say that in Hong Kong, corruption is not a serious problem. We don't have syndicated corruption. Besides, we're always proactive in monitoring all parties concerned. We always guard against the revival of syndicated corruption. Commissioner, What about the deterrent effect? In particular, when the court hands down punishment, do you think is enough? Well, every now and then we review the highest punishment allowed in our laws. If we find the punishment not enough, the DOJ will lodge an appeal. Members, we are severely behind schedule today. We're overrun. I'd like to thank the Commissioner for preparing such good responses for us. So thank you very much. Item 3 on the agenda, any other business? I'd like to remind members that on the 29th, that is tomorrow at 2:30 p.m., we'll have a special meeting to listen to the report of the Commissioner of Police on the crime situation for 2012. If there's no other business, meeting adjourned. Thank you.